So today we'll.
Srinath, your voice is, it's resound, echo sound.
I think. I think. Fine. Okay. So today what we'll do two things today. First thing, so we have seen from where to download Tomcat, right? And how to actually set up different things in Tomcat and all, right? So today we'll see first thing how to set up Tomcat uh, with Eclipse. Right, this is very important, right? How to set up a Tomcat, because each and every web service or or any website, right? In order to work or in order to develop anything, right? So you have to actually have one of the server which is integrated with Eclipse. If you don't do that integration, right, it will not work. Okay, so setting up with Eclipse is something which we should do for basically two things, which is container-based applications. So we normally call web and web services basically, right, are normally container-based. Now, whenever we say container-based, which means they have their own container server on which it runs. So normally what do we do is, like if you are developing any normal Java application, right, like let's say you're developing something on core Java, right, then the main trigger of that application will be main method. I hope you guys know this. So main method is something which will be a trigger method. So any one of the class or more than one classes can have main method, right? And at least one class should have main method as such. Right? At least one or more than one class can have main method, so that you can actually trigger the application to start off. Right? So those things are something which normally comes under the core applications of Java. And normally when we say container based, we call it as web or web service based, where you don't need any main methods to trigger. They need a container on which everything runs, and the container is provided by your web server. And the web server, we have so many web servers in market, as I said, like WebLogic, WebSphere, you have JBoss, you have iOS, you have Bluefish and all. But normally you have one of the best one, which is Apache's Tomcat web server. Even this is something which is used for both small scale sites and the higher web servers too. So this is something which we'll be using, because this is a lightweight one and you can actually integrate this directly, and configuration everything is something which you can see in an easy way, right? That's why we are using Tomcat here. So we have seen physically how to actually download Tomcat, what are the different things we have in Tomcat and all, right? So today we'll see how to set up the same Tomcat, right? Collaborate this with Eclipse first, right? Now, so till now we were actually creating direct Android projects and all, right? So in this workspace, same workspace, right, you can actually create the project which is not an Android project too, because it's a normal Eclipse we have, right? You can create any type of project you want. Now there are few things which you have to remember. Like the first thing is the perspective. Now here you can see at the right top, right, there is something called, these are called as a different perspectives. Like based on the perspective you select, right, your Eclipse will be rearranged with the different components in order to use that one, right? Now you can see there are so many perspectives. When you click on this, you can see there are so many perspectives we have. But normally we do use something called Java. Now for all Android based things, right, you can directly use Java, because we just need a core Java in order to develop our Android applications, right? Now, in order to set up web service on Eclipse, right, or when we are going to create a web service, right, it needs a container to run, right? Because you can't develop something without testing at infinite, right? You can't write the whole application code and test it at once, right? You can't do that. So that's why in order to create a web service, you need a Tomcat setup for your Eclipse. Now, in order to do that, first thing what I have to do is we have to go to the perspective called Java EE, right? So when I click on this, you can see so many things will change. You can see here, we got data source explorer. For normal Java perspective, we just have console and everything, right? In the same way, when you select on something, few things change, which normally gives us support to actually develop some web-based or content-based. First, let us start how to collaborate our Tomcat server. So this is the path where we actually downloaded the Tomcat, right? And actually, I've actually unzipped it to my Tomcat Apache folder. Right? Now in this Eclipse, you can see that there is a tab over here called servers, right? And if you don't see tab, don't worry. Sometimes even if you select Java, right? Sometimes it may skip. Don't worry. So all these tabs you can actually enable whenever you want from this. So in window option, right? Sorry. You have something called show view. In show view here, either you can check your tabs here, something which will actually enable your tabs based on the section mode. But if you don't find here, just go to other and select servers. Click on servers. Now you can see. Now initially you can see that there is no server being configured here. Right? Now in order to configure that, you can click on new server wizard here. Now a wizard will open. This is something where you can actually configure your server. Now you can see here, you can actually configure any type of server you want to Eclipse. Right? You can configure Apache server, which we are going to do. You can actually, create your own Java server. This is something which is a virtual server built over the Java basic server, right? Or if you want to check even compatibility, right? Now, why do we go for different servers directly integrating with Eclipse? Now, during development itself, you have to check even the compatibility of servers too, right? Let's say if you're using some jar files or anything for development of web services, right? Then you have to make sure that the corresponding jar should work on a Tomcat container or a WebLogic container or not, right? But that is the reason why we normally go for a direct collaboration of server with our Eclipse, right? Normally you can see in IBM we have WebSphere's IBM 6th version, or if you take JBoss, we have JBoss different versions support. In the same way we have Oracle, right, which is a WebLogic server standalone, right? Now these are different servers which you have. Now these are not the only servers which you can do. If you want to download anytime, you can download this. But whatever adapters are, so normally these are called as adapters, right? Adapter in a sense, a key thing which connects your Eclipse, right, with your Tomcat server. Now how it works is, now if you have already seen something called editing, if you remember editor, this is our something called Android development toolkit, right? So we have used the Android development toolkit's ADT link to connect to our SDK, right? Now we have our SDK of Android in one place, right? And something else is Eclipse in one place. How can we connect? We actually connected these two using a ADT link. ADT is nothing but a plugin, right, which can be used to integrate our SDK with Eclipse. Until unless we integrate SDK, which is Android SDK with Eclipse, we can't develop any sort of Android applications. Same way, in order to actually link up between Eclipse and web server, right, you need some adapters, which are called as server adapters. Now all these things are called as adapters. Now this is one adapter which is used to integrate your IBM WebSphere server with your Eclipse, right? That is all. Now let's go to the actual business. Now Apache is a folder where you can see all the Tomcat server adapters you have. Now when you see these many servers, right, these actually give you the actual version of Tomcat which our current Eclipse can support. That is something which this version means. It is very important to keep this in mind, which means the version of your Eclipse, the version which you are using, right, Eclipse, let's say I'm actually using some Juno version, right? Now this Eclipse can actually have support till Tomcat 7.0 server. Now if you actually go ahead and see the Tomcat side, right, so let me go to Tomcat here. Right, if you go to Tomcat side, now you can see even the latest version called 8 got released, right? Tomcat 8 is in place now. Let's go to documentation. Now you can see it got released recently, right, Tomcat 8. But from the stable version which is we are using is Tomcat 7 actually, right? You can say 7 got released in around it's almost 4-5 months back, the main release. It is something which is the latest build actually. 7 got released, it's been so many months, but the latest build called 42, which we have downloaded, right? The latest one, 42 build, right, is something which got released. Now you can see every time your Eclipse version gets increased, right? The actually Eclipse people actually release latest versions of Eclipse every year as such. They have a recurring cycle of year base, right? So last year June they actually released Juno. So this year June they actually released Kepler. So there is one more Eclipse plan for next year actually, right? So they actually go with that. Now while upgrading, right, they also upgrade the support for different versions of Tomcat. I mean, different versions of different different servers, right? So that is how we can actually collaborate. Right, now let me select this Tomcat 7 because Tomcat 7 is the one which we downloaded, right? Let me click on next here. Now don't change anything here. Now as I said, localhost is something which here anyways we are giving it as a name, but normally localhost means that you are actually showing your application or your browser that you are going to browse your local machine, right? Or whatever you are going to deploy, you are going to deploy on a local machine. That is what is a host name and the server name. So just leave the server name as it is. Don't change. Even if you are changing the server name, right, you can change, but try to keep this version standard. Because tomorrow, if anyone else is trying to work on the application, right, then he should know what is a version of Tomcat or what is a version of server you are using, so that he can actually work on the same. Right? Click on next here. Now this is a window where you have to map your Tomcat installation directory with your adapter. Right? Now you can do two things. Either you can download and install. Now you can see, the registry is updated with 7.0.12. No, you don't have to do this, right? Rather, you can directly give the install path. So let me just go ahead with this path. So this is the path which I have my Tomcat, and you have to give the path till bin. Don't go into bin. You have to give the path where Tomcat's bin folder is there, right? So let me give that. I've just pasted here, and you can keep the same name here. This name will appear in your service tab. Fine. Now this is your Tomcat actually. If you give some wrong path, right, now you can see it will directly say that there is no installation path, because it will immediately, as soon as you change your path, right, it will actually track the Tomcat server and will keep it ready, right? So now click on finish. So when you click on finish, it will automatically do two things. First thing, it will actually create an instance of your server here. You can see Tomcat server. Initially it will be stopped, and you can see that there is one folder which got created in Eclipse called servers tab. This is the folder which you have. Now these two things are very important here. Don't ever delete this, and if you want to, you can delete and reconfigure it again, right? And don't ever close this project. Normally what do? We can see all the projects what we have, right? I've actually closed them, right? Now in Eclipse, right, if you close all the projects, right, and whenever you build or do something, these projects will not get affected, and because of these projects, time delay won't be there. That's why we just keep it as a suspended mode, which is called as a closed mode. You can do them for normal projects, but don't do for your servers, because if you just close this project, right, what happens is the connection to this server will not happen. That's why always keep the server folder open. That's fine. Even if you are closing it, and if you are going back to work on web service, you can just open this project. Right? Now that is your Tomcat setup you have, and here in this Tomcat you can see one thing: all the files, right, which we have in our bin and config folders, right, whatever actual things are needed, like you have Catalina, property, servers, Tomcat is. You can see here everything got copied over here, right? Now when you double click on this, right, Now here you will get all the settings of your Tomcat. If you remember this port, we already have set this port called HTTP 1.1 in our connection, right, as a 4 nines port. Now you can see whenever we develop something, now this is going to use the same Tomcat, Tomcat instance with the port called 999, right? Now this is how we normally actually set up things. Now if you change here, right, if you change anything over here, it is going to affect only this Tomcat, the one which you have set, right? Once you delete this, then again if you configure again the port which you have configured at your Tomcat level, right, will be copied back. Okay, so just don't do anything. Now here, this is the first thing we have. Second thing. So now we are actually done with configuring Eclipse to the Tomcat. Now, so how to start Tomcat here? Now, how can we start Tomcat at the manually out of Eclipse? You can just go to bin folder, right, and you can have a startup batch here, right? Now here, how to start is normally if you have any web application or web service, right, you can use a direct run button, or you can directly go run as some. You will get some options here like either run on server or something, right? And you can start your server directly. Or if you want to check here, you can right click on this instance. You have all options. You have start, you have restart, you have stop, right? You have everything you want. Or you can just select and you have this button here. This will actually start the server, right? Now I just want to show you something called, this is very important, called port locking. What is port locking here? Now, as I said, so here this instance of Tomcat, right, Tomcat whatever we have in our folder is something which is different from here. Once you set this, which means a separate instance of Tomcat will be set with your Eclipse. Fine. Now let us say I'm actually running this Tomcat first. When I click on startup, right, my Tomcat will start. Right, and here let it start. Okay, so Tomcat is start. Now you can see here that your protocol handler is locked 999, which means already my Tomcat, one of the instances of my Tomcat is running, and it is running on the port 9999. This is the port, right? Now if you try to start your Tomcat from Eclipse, so let me right click and start. Click on start. Now you can see this you will find this instance in your servers folder, right? And when I start, whatever log you can see in console, right, you can see the same log even in our console here, right? Let me start the server. Let me right click and start here. Right, you can see, right, there is a console here. Now you can see here that right now it didn't got started. Right, you can see it says that address already in use. The port which I was talking about, now you can see it actually tried to start the server on this port, right? But you can see here I'm already using that port. This is something which is called as a port locking. When I start my server on some port, no other application can use the same port for any purpose. It can be receiving data or sending data or making it lock for their purpose. They can't do. Now, unless I unlock this, which means unless I release this port, no one can use. Now, how to release this port is, if I shut down my server, right, let me go here and click on shutdown batch. You can see when I shut down the server, now the port is free now. Now if you want to check out, let me just run it again. Let me clear this log, go back here, right click and start. When I start this, you can see it started, right? And if you go to console, you can see server startup in so and so seconds, and you can see protocol is using my repline port. Now this is how we actually lock up the server. Now that's why whenever you run any project, right, if you get some address already in use, or address is read only, or locked port, or any these kind of thing, right? And normally you have to stop the application which actually locked. And if you don't find the application, the best way is to restart your machine. Once you restart your machine, all the ports will get killed, and whenever you start up a machine again, now they will start, the ports will be free. Whatever ports are being used by Windows operating system will be logged anyways, but the remaining ports will be free. Now at that time you can actually start using this, right? This is something which is called as a port locking. Now if you try to start from here, check out what happens. So let me run this from command prompt. So here, so let me just go to D folder. I think there is in D folder. Okay, so let me just click on the startup and drag and drop. Now when I click on this, okay, this will actually give you something else. That's fine. What I can do, I can run this directly. When I run this, you can see my Tomcat will try to start and it will actually close abruptly. It won't start, right? It will try to start, but it will close. Reason is same thing. The port is not ready. Now if you go to logs here, let me just check out these logs. So today is 12th, localhost here, right? Now you can see here, contest is destroyed. Now why it is destroyed is, this looks weird. Let me open this in Notepad. Right, you can see these are logs. So in your Tomcat server, right, in your Apache, you have something called logs. This will give you the logs folder, right? So you can actually, clear these things, because these things will be going. Now this is one folder. So your admin, your server admin will be taken care of, right? Now, so as of now, you can see these are very small KB files, but in real time, these things will be going like anything. Now, for these files, right, they'll be having a backup servers, right? Now you can see the context is destroyed. It says, let me go to Catalina here. Just wanted to show something. Now deploying your application, so and so, startup. Now you can see address already in use, right? Now this is something which we already got in our Eclipse, which means the port which we try to use here, right, to start my Tomcat manually, right, it didn't start it, right? So that is what is something which is called as a port locking. And always make sure whenever it happens, right, either you have to unlock your port. Now how can I stop my server from in Eclipse? It's again simple. You can see there is a red button to stop, or right click on this and stop your server. This will stop your Tomcat. And now if you want to start it manually to deploy things outside, now you can go ahead and do that. Let's click on startup here. Now it will start because the port is there. Right? Now this is the complete setup of Tomcat, which you can do in an exclusive way and to the Eclipse. Now you can use the same setup for even your web application development if you want, right? And Eclipse is, will give you a friendly, development environment to actually develop things in an easy way. You don't have to actually worry about Tomcat starting, restarting, and sometimes, whenever you change something, we have to restart your server and everything, right? Tomcat will actually take care of that, right? Now this is something which is called as a setting up of web service, server with Eclipse. Fine. So till here, any questions, guys? Till here or any part of server? Now this will be the actual server setup and everything we have. Now this is a common server setup for all the servers, right? And for all type of Eclipse, all type of applications which need content-based starting up in Eclipse. Right? Okay, so if things are clear, now let's move on to the next one, which is creation of web service. We'll now see how to create a web service Now, as I said, I'll be using access to web service creation, right? Now, sorry. Before, let me create a project here. Now, in order to create a web service, right, we'll have to go for a web project first, right? So, creation of web services you can do in several ways. Now, normally to get all the support of all the container-based applications, right? So that is a place where we have to go for dynamic web project, which will give you a support for all web projects, right? Now there are a few things which you have to work on here. Now, first thing is, anyways, it's a project name. So let me give it a stored web service, WS. So WS is my web service name, right? This is my project name as such, and this will be a lib directory name also. What is a lib directory name? I'll show you once we deploy this project, right? And then here you can see that your target runtime, right, the one which we have created here, right, Eclipse will actually take the all servers, whatever you configure, right, it will take all the servers you want, and it will show one default one, right? And if you want to create a new runtime for this, you can actually go ahead for that. When you click on new runtime, again you can see it will actually open the same wizard. Again you have to set up different things. Don't worry, we can use the same server for all the applications. It is not restricted for one application. I am talking about one workspace. In my workspace, right, I can have a server, but if you configure the same server in some other Eclipse workspace, right, then you have to take care of the port thing. Port thing is something, if you keep different, then your single instance of Tomcat, right, will actually bifurcate into two and work on different ports. Okay. Now this is something web module, right, will give you a servlet version. Now basically by default it will give you a servlet 3 version, right? And normally when we actually develop web applications, websites, right, normally we either go for 2.5 or 3.0. For more manual configurations of servlets, filters, right, or contexts or configs, right, we normally go for 2.5, or basically you can also go for 3.0. Either one is okay. Now here, as we are creating web service, right, now for servlet 3.0 version, we don't have access to support. It is there for 2.5, right? Now you can see when you select on 2.5, now you have your either CXF web service, right, or you can actually select the different pattern you want. Now let me click on modify here. When I click on modify, now you can see different elements which you can actually select. Now you can see that yes, I can actually select something called access to web services, right, so that I can develop something on access to. Select on this, right. So here you can see, okay, runtime will be same, no worry about that. And once you are done with this, click on OK. Now you can see it will select your access to anyways. So access to is here, don't worry, click on OK. Now this will actually give you the setup of access to in first window. Now let me click on next. Now this is something which will give you the classes, because our web service class is completely will be all the raw files where you are going to write all the logics will be your normal Java classes, right? And whenever it gets compiled, right, it will actually go and sit in this folder. Now don't have to worry, you can just keep as it is, or if you want you can change your folder, output folder. Click on next. And now this is again very important. I hope if you have developed any web applications or anything, right, now you know the importance of these two. Now context root is something which will give you a lib root or basic project name, or the context default path, right? This is something. And the content directory is where all raw files like XMLs, config files, JSPs, HTML files, CSS files, JavaScript files, right, or different sort of files, right, will actually stay. All the content parts we normally keep it in a web content. Now the next one is the deployment descriptor. Now, normally it is a web.xml, which we normally call it as a configuration file, which is also called as a deployment descriptor. Always try to keep it checked. Sometimes it will be unchecked. Right? So that is the reason why whenever you give this window, normally what people do is they will actually fill the first window and click on finish. Don't do that. Okay, always try to create a project checking each and every step, so that you should know once you have created a project, you don't have to go again change something. It may not affect the things right in the right way. So Lakshmi is asking context root. Okay, context root is something like it will give you. I hope you know something called relative path, right? Relative path. So relative path. Yeah, you can unmute use, which is our project name. Fine. Yeah. Click on finish. Now it will say yes, like failed while installing access to web service core. Now, which means it doesn't have access to runtime. Now that is why I have actually kept this access to release open. Now, if you are creating access to project, right? Now it is very important to have your access to web services core set up in your workspace, right? Normally you can actually go for any binaries you want, right? So let me just download one of the binary. You can just go here. So you can directly say access to binaries download, or you can go ahead with this link. Anyways, as it is recording, right? You can just go ahead and take this access to. Again, access to is something which is Apache's release. Now, so this is compatible with most of the servers. It will run in all WebLogic servers, WebSphere, right, in same way. Fine. So let me just go ahead and download one of the binaries here, which is the latest one maybe. Click on zip file here, right? Or basically, if you want, we have something configured on install. I hope that's right. So let me just download this. Okay. So now when you click on okay, right, then it will actually skip your project. You can see here it will create, but the thing is it won't get a support of access. Now first let's see how to configure that. Let's go to window preferences here. Now here we have something called server or web services. You have access to preferences, right? Now this will you will get this by default. Actually, if you have Eclipse, right, by default you will actually get this web services one, and this is different for different workspaces, guys. For each workspace you have to set your preference. Now this window preference is nothing but the current workspace window preference, right? So let me delete this stored publish, because this is not set for complete web service. So let me click on OK. Now if you want this link, I'm actually pinging this link in your GoToMeeting. You can just keep that if you want. So let me open this. So it is done. So let me cut it up and let me paste in the path called Tomcat server here. Let me just say access to API, paste here. Let me extract this. Okay, so this is your API, right? So let me just set this path. Okay, now let's go to Eclipse. Now let me go to window here, preferences. Now here, anyways, I'm directly here. Now if you want, you can go to web services and access to preferences, right? Now guys, one more thing, I'm not going to project and properties. We are not setting anything on project based. We are setting everything on window based. Okay, now let me just give this. Okay, now you can see access loaded successfully. If it doesn't, just click on apply. Now again, you have to give access path till the bin folder again. You have to give the bin folder. Don't go into bin, you have to give the right bin folder, right? Now this will actually make your window enable for your access to runtime. Now click on OK. Right, now let me create Dynamic project now. New Dynamic project. Let me call it as store WS. Let me click on 2.5, click on modify. Let me select this and OK. Click on next. Click on next. Perfect. Click on finish. Now you can see it says installing access to web services. Right. So wherever you are actually taking up that right now, your web service thing are ready. Now you have one thing, yes, this one. Now you have web content. If you remember previously, this access to was not there, right? Now it actually got all the APIs. Now you can see when I open this, you can see all the default pages and all the APIs, right? Will get included automatically. Everything you know, right? This is how we normally set up our access to. So here you have something called, yes, in lib folder you can see here under web content lib folder you can see all the access to jars whatever are needed for us, right, will get automatically installed. So that is something that is how we normally create a web service project. Now the next step, this is the project creation which we have. Let's move ahead. So the next step is how can we create a web service in here. Now normally this is something which is same as creation of a website or anything. Now this pattern till here is something which is common for all. It can be a web service or it can be a website or anything. Right? Now let's go ahead and create something called web client or web server. So let me right click on this, new, let me create some package, call it as com dot something, some street dot, let's say this is service, right? So I'm going to create a service class here. Now service class is nothing but a very simple Java class itself. Let me create a class here. So let me say as let me call it as my store. Now this is something which is my web service name or a class name rather, right? Let me click on finish. Right? Now this is something which is your web service, sorry, a simple class. Now we haven't created any sort of web service or anything here. I'll show you how to convert this into web service. So initially, let's say I'm going to create this as, let me call something as public string, right? Let's say get some name, get maybe, let me just say get fruit items, get fruits. Is it correct? I don't know, that's fine, we are not concerned about that. So let me just say try catch here, right? So here let's say I'm just saying return of something apple, right? Anyways, we'll increase this furthermore, don't worry about that. String, let me call it as lstr fruits. Now this fruits, let's say I'm giving it as apple, and so it's a very simple class we have anyways. So let's say I'm actually okay, it's a very simple class and a simple method you have, right? Now let me rebuild this project. Now here, in order to convert this into a web service in this project, right? Now this is how we normally do. Now we should have one trigger class. Now my store, I'm actually keeping it as a web methods class, where I'll be writing all the triggered web methods I want, right? Now I'm going to use this as a base, which is my store will be a main trigger, which is a actual web service for me in order to use all the inner classes I have. Let me right click on this. Now you have an option called yes, web services, create web service. Click on that. Now I'm going to show you how it actually works. Right? Now here you can see, now this window is very important, guys. We are creating a bottom-up Java web service, right? Because we are going, this web service is going to get the request. Now here, few things are very important. In this configuration, you have to set which server you want to use. Yes, we are going to use Tomcat 7. Even for deployment, you are going to use the same thing, right? So let's keep this. Now here, you can see what is a web service runtime you want. Now you can see by default, it is taking something called, this is very important, guys. The second one is very important. Now it says that web service runtime is Apache Access, right? But what we have selected, we have actually selected Apache Access 2. Always check these two. First thing is Apache Access 2. Anyway, this will be your same. But if you have multiple adapters being set, right, then you have to select the actual server runtime you want. Right? Now, once you are done with this, click on OK. Now, these three will be OK. Now, creating web service client, you should be sure of what exactly you are providing. Otherwise, it may corrupt your web service. Right? And this is something which says start or check. Let me just say test service so that you can actually test that. Right? And don't ever click on don't show, because every time you may have to check these configurations again and again. Right? Now you can just go ahead now, and if you want you can just say publish and monitor. Don't worry, even if you don't do that, it will actually do things for you. Let me click on next here. Now when I click on next, it will ask for generate default service XML. Yes, I do want next here. Now we are in process of creating a web service. Now it says, now you can see here it is asking that yes, do you want to start a server? Now why do we want to start a server? Is the reason that when you start the server, right, what happens? It will actually when I click on start, it will start my Tomcat, it will deploy my project, and it will give me an interface where I can test this service. Right? So for that, let me click on start. So you can see here it says see, it is starting. My Tomcat is starting. Tomcat server. So after this is done, right, click on next, and okay, it is web service explorer. I'll show you where exactly it will be. Click on next and just click on finish. When you click on finish, right, now your web service explorer will open. Now this is your web service explorer, right? Now you can see here one thing got deployed. In your Tomcat, your project name store.ws, which is a dynamic web type of project, right, got deployed into your web service. This is your web service got deployed. Now synchronized is nothing but all the data like classes or different jars, right, got copied over here, which is published here. Now here you can see this is your web service link, visitor link. We normally call it as a visitor link, which is a web service dynamic link, right? Now this is a web service dynamic link. If you go ahead and paste it here, right? Now this is the link which we are going to use, guys. You can see it will give us a libroot, which is contextual as I said store.ws, and it will go to services. Now this services is nothing but the services which we are going to create here, right? And then you can see my store is the actual service name we have, because I said we have created a web service with this name, and then other visual will give you the visual. Now you can see this is a XML which we get. Now you can see here that here you can see get fruits. Now everything will appear in XML form, right? Because XML is a protocol which our SOAP will use. SOAP protocol will use, right? Now this is what it is using, that it is using actually XML. Now everything will be shown in XML. Now this link, whatever you can see is a link which you are going to use. Now you can see here it says get fruits, right? It will actually, it will call whenever you call this, and then it will work. Now you can see it gives something called namespace as service.c.com. Now this namespace is nothing but the namespace which we created here, which is com.service. Okay, don't have to worry. So whenever you want to use, we'll see the usage part, because usage part is something which we'll be checking out next class. But yes, this is how we normally create the web service. Now let me just expand this web service explorer here. Now when I click on my store here, right, now anyways you can see three different ways of posting. Either you can actually go ahead with HTTP binding or SOAP binding. So let me go with HTTP binding here. Now you can see get fruits. Click on this. This is a method you are actually looking at, right? Now when I click on this endpoints here, go, right? Now it says unexpected, erase it up. Server returned is also called endpoint. Maybe this is down. Don't worry about that. So when we use this, right, it will actually give us a value which we have to get. Invoke service method null. That's fine. What did we write here? This is fruits, and we got it. Don't worry about this, because we are going to use this method in order to serve form now here. Now let me just check on SOAP here. Click on go. Right, now you can see raw content displayed in a form. That's fine. So so this is how we create a web service. Now here, when we consume this web service, right, which means when we actually consume this in order to use in our Android, right, because we are going to use this link, right, basically to browse on our Android. Now this is the way how I know even the normal apps do. They actually take up the visual, right? Whenever I say visual, it is a visual link, or you can just think about it as a web service link. Okay, web service link, and then configure it to their Android services. Now there is something which you have to use in Android. I'll show you how exactly we can use this directly. Now again guys, I'm not talking about anything like creation of a web service client. If you already know how to use a visual file in web applications, don't keep that in mind, because in Android it is completely different to how to use a web service in our Android, right? That is completely different. Now here there is one more thing that we have to learn. Everything what you have seen here is default. Eclipse have done everything to us, right? We haven't done anything. Now when you actually open this web service, right, link, you can see the XML. Now this XML we haven't deployed, but in real time, yes, during development I can understand that you need some support to test. But in real time, when you actually want to move this web service to production, this is not something which you are going to do. Now let me show you what exactly you have to do in order to deploy in actual server. Now here, what is actual server we have? The one which we have which are here, right, which is our Tomcat server. If you start it manually and deploy, that is something which is actual, right? Now let me do one thing. First, let me close this. Let me show you the next part called, that is something which is web service creation. The next part is, which is deploying. Very important part. The third step which you have is deploying a web service, deploying on server. Right, now let me show you how to do that. Now let me stop this server. In order to stop, you can select this and stop it up here. So the server will stop. Now you can see server stop, right? If you go back again and click browse URL, right, see what happens here. Now you can see it can't establish so and so port now, right? Because we actually the server is down. That's why it will not give us any sort of feed to browse on this server and on this port. Now let us see how we can actually deploy our web service as we do normally in our real time. Fine. Now Don't worry about the content here, guys. Content thing we'll understand. Okay, when we actually start applying this on our Android, right? Then we'll go for writing more methods and okay. Now today is something which we have to see how the web service works in general, right? Now, so in order to deploy a web service, right, we have to actually follow some steps here, right? Now, first thing is you can't deploy any project directly into Tomcat, right? You have to, follow some steps like you have to create something like in some technologies we say you have to tar your application or you have to zip up your application, right? Or you have to, upload your direct files into server and use a server files context. There are different terminologies which you can use when you are actually doing deployment. And this deployment which I am talking about is something which is deploying a Java website or a web service. Everything is same, guys. This deployment is something which is common for all. It can be for web or web service or a website or anything developed on some frameworks like Spring, Struts, whatever you are. Even if you are using Hibernate, doesn't matter at all. This deployment will be common for all, right? So let us see how exactly we can actually do that, right? So let me just go ahead here. Sorry guys. Okay, the first step is you have to get the zip file, or you have to get something called here in Java, right? We have something called war file. I hope you have heard of war file, jar file and all, right? Now we are going to see something which is a war file, which is called as a web archive. It is something which is a web archive file, right? Now this is the format of file which we have to get in order to deploy on a Tomcat, right? Now the first step, let's go ahead and see how to get a war file. Now before taking war file, always try to rebuild your project so that all the classes and everything will actually get ready. Right? Now let me just right click on this. We have creation of war file. Eclipse have got a direct export of war file. Now normally before the older version of Eclipse, right? Normally we used to do something like you have to create this war file using a command prompt. You have to make sure all files are there. You have to do there used to be so many things, but in your version of Eclipse it's a direct setup of war file, right? Now here you have to do destination. Destination is nothing but where do you want to create a war file, right? So let me give this destination, which is our same Eclipse workspace, let's say. Right now, I want to create my war file here. Save. Now you can see that it will actually export all the classes and all the APIs needed, and it will create one file called war file. This is your war file which you have, which is called as a web archive file. Now this is the first step and a very important step you have. Now before this, always make sure that you don't have any sort of bugs or problems in here, right? Make sure everything is bug free. Otherwise, what happens here, even while creating your war file, right, it won't create if you have any bugs in this. Let me just show you that. Let's say I have this. When I save it, you can see there is a bug here, right? Now let me just go ahead and export this to the same path. You can see overwrite existing. Click on this. Click on finish here. So sometimes, okay, created war file. Okay, I don't know. Sometimes whenever you are actually clicking up, right, it will say that your war file is created with some bugs. Do you want to proceed? Maybe in your version of Eclipse it may come, don't worry. But always make sure your Eclipse doesn't have any, your project doesn't have any bugs. Click on finish here. Now it will create a latest version of war file. Okay. Now this is your war file creation. First step. Second step is starting your server. because until unless we start a Tomcat, right, we can't deploy. Now let me go to Tomcat server here and click on startup. Okay, so this will start my Tomcat server. So this is the Tomcat server started. Now how can we make sure the Tomcat server is started? You can directly go to localhost and something like 999, right, the same port, because we have used the port here. Now this is a localhost. Either you can go for localhost or you can go for host name. Now my host name is actually Srinath. Click on this. Now you can see the same Apache will open. Right? Normally I hope you know how to get a host name. You can go to command prompt, just say host name here. It will give you the host name you have. The machine name rather. Right? Or you can actually take up your IP also. Let me just show you IP here. If you go for IP config, my IP is so and so, IPv4 192.168.25. I can just do that, 192.168.2.5. Enter. You can see the same Apache will open. Either ways you can go. You can go for localhost or your host name, and you can see the same page will open. Right? But basically, if you're working on local, normally we go for localhost, right? And if you're working for some, let's say, host name, we normally go for host name. Why? Because when you say google.com is nothing but a host name, right? That is what we have. Let's use this and enter here. Now you can see this is my app. Now, in order to deploy, we have to go for manager app. If you remember, manager app is something where you can deploy and undeploy all the projects. So let me give admin. We already have configured our admin, which is manager GUI role, right? Which is admin. I'm giving the same role, which will actually give me here. Maybe will take me here, right? Now this is a window where you can actually have your Tomcat application manager, which is you can deploy and do stuffs. Now let me go here. Down the line you have something called deploy option, which is a slot beneath this, all the applications you have. Now here you have two options. Either you can give your direct URL where you actually want to get the var from, or you can, if you have a direct var, anyways we have a direct var file right in here, right? You can just select, I just copied this path here, click on browse. I'm just taking up things from here, which is var file deploy, right? Click on browse. Let me give some path here. Click on store WS. This is my web service store, right? And click on deploy. When I deploy this, now what is it running? Now you can see OK. Now this is the only message slot you have which will show you what is happening, guys. It's very important. It doesn't give any alerts or anything. Now you can see your store WS got deployed here, right? Now let's go ahead and see how it works. Let me just say store WS here. Now here I'm going to give the name as Srinath, host name, and colon here. Now you can see this is the web service link you have, right? This so and so web services and so and so. Now it will give you the complete XML of your web service here. Now you can see that there is get fruits and so and so. For this button get fruits you have a request, get fruits request, and you will have something called get fruits response, right? Now you can see it will give you, it will take, if you have any argument to pass, it will take that, right? Things work in different ways. Now this is how we normally get, deploy web service and create a visual file. Now you can see this is how we normally create a visual file, right? Now here if you can see, if I increase something, let's say I'm going to take one more method, let's say, right? Let's say this is something get weights, some get weights to set, right? Just say this is something called carrot, right? Now let me just show you quickly how to deploy. First, clean, which is rebuild. Right click on this export your WAR file, give the path where you want, click on finish. It will give you, always check the date and time. This WAR file you can see 1047, it got created over here, right? And now let's go to the Tomcat manager again, right? Now here, which means I have got a new version of my WAR file, which means first what you have to do, we have to undeploy this web service. How can you do that? Remember, you have to click on undeploy here. When I undeploy here, now you can see, okay, undeployed application context, show web service. Now you can see that project got undeployed from here. Now again I'm going to deploy, browse on, click on this, click on deploy. Right? Now you can see it got deployed. Now normally what do we do is, whenever we deploy anything, right, we normally restart the server. Now even if you don't restart Tomcat 7 and from 6 onwards, right, it will actually load things directly. But to be safe side, let me just restart the server too. Let's go to bin here, shut down the server and start up the server again. Now here you can see one more thing will come. Okay, now you can see, some things are going big, right? Now in between you can see here this part. Okay, let me show you, let me mark it. Now you can see here your web store, right, got deployed. It says deploying var called web store. Now that is why initially when we didn't have anything, right, everything was fast and we didn't notice this much of log, right? Now you can see things will go, because each and every time you increase your application deployment, your Tomcat will take some time to start, because it has to deploy all the web applications we have. Fine. Now this is my new web service we deploy. Let's go ahead and refresh this site. Let me just refresh this URL. Now you can see get fruits, get fish. Right? Everything will get afresh. Right? Now this is the way how you can actually create a web service and deploy. It is very important that whenever you create any change, if you do any change here, right? Anyways, I didn't create my web service again because it got affected directly, but always you should remember one thing: whenever you change any sort of things here in any of the class, right, always try to create a web service again and again. You can just right click again, go to web services, create web services, right? Again you have to select the same access to, okay, and you can just keep a start service and everything, right? Or you can just say deploy service, or you can just say develop service. Now for this we have to make sure to shut down the other port, right? So that you can just say start Tomcat 7 Apache 2 so and so, perfect. Now it is so and so, click on next. Now what do we need to do here? It will ask whether you want to override, right? Because it already have a web service got created. But if you change anything, if you are changing few things on any classes, that's fine. But if you are changing something on, like if you are adding in any web method or something, right, you have to create a service again. It's fine. If you want to overwrite, yes, overwrite it. Now if you are doing any manual changes to your service, right, then you have to actually reconsider this part. But we normally don't do that. Click on SQL. Now it will ask for start. Click on start again. This is just to check whether everything is going fine or not, right? And click on finish. This will actually finish up your thing. Now you can take a WAR file, now because now you are sure that everything will work in the same way, right? Now you can take a WAR file, right? The WAR file will be generated. Now you can go ahead here. Okay, we didn't stop it. Anyways, doesn't matter. Okay, now you can actually go ahead and undeploy this again. So undeploy this. Okay, let me open this again here, manager app here, and click on undeploy. anyways. Sometimes this can happen if it is taking so much of time, or sometimes it will fail to undeploy, right? Don't worry about that. Just do restart your server and everything will go in the same way. Let me just shut down this. Start this again. Let me just meanwhile let me just restart this. Okay, this got started, and if you go ahead with this side, now go to the app. Now you can see actually it got undeployed but our Tomcat was slow, that's why it did. Let me click on browse, select this war, click on the right. Now you can see this. Now let's go ahead and run this. Now you can see all the methods whatever we have will get created, right? Now this is how we create a web service and deploy in Tomcat. This is how we work completely on Tomcat, and I hope we have got a decent, we have actually approached a decent way how to create different things, right? Now as our web services and everything are ready, right? Now in our next class we'll see how to apply them, right? Basically we'll start enhancing this more and more. Anyways, we are going to deploy it from here, and we are going to use this link, which is this link to actually access from Android. For our Android, this is the mother link. From there, we are going to actually start the things. Right? I'll keep things ready so that we can actually start directly watching that how it actually works. Fine. So